Hey there, welcome. Lotus with Art of Sacred Embodiment. So today I want to talk about messiness. The messiness that life can be sometimes, and the messiness that it can feel inside, and that maybe messiness is perfect. We need messiness. Messiness is that, that fertile ground from which we actually grow, gain clarity, deepen who we are, deepen our experience, know what's right and true for us. And it can be messy in the process. I think that we tend to have a lot of judgment about not getting things right in general. It's just part of our programming. Shame and guilt if we make mistakes. Shame and guilt if, we get something wrong or we don't show up in a perfect manner. And that's kind of fading away. And part of the reason why that's fading away is because as humans and as evolving humans, and even as humans remembering our divinity, we can be perfectly imperfect. We can be the masterpiece in process. And when we show up knowing that, allowing that in ourselves, we can actually show up more connected to our true essence, to our authenticity, and just realizing and recognizing that as we grow and evolve and change, we're constantly putting on shoes that might feel too big, or we're trying to take off shoes that feel too small, and we can feel clumsy, as we're finding new footing consistently and continually. So I like to kind of look at messiness from two different maybe polarities, right? And yet recognize that both of them have their jewels. Both of them create a pearl, lessons of many pearls. And that when we can look at them as sacred, when we can look at the messiness as, an artist that's covered in paint, perhaps because they've been so, in process. Or maybe they're covered in paint because they haven't been paying attention and haven't been in process. So the first kind of messiness that I like to look at is that messiness that happens when we truly aren't listening to what our truth is. When deep down we know what is right and true for us. Deep down we know when we need to be making a different choice. And yet we're resistant to make that choice. We're afraid of making that choice. Maybe we don't know how to go about making it. And so we just kind of like keep putting it off because we're not sure what to do. But the longer that we dig our heels in, or like keep our head buried in the sand, or push certain things away, the more uncomfortable it gets, the more painful it gets inside, the more chaotic we can get inside. And the more our alignment is like screeching against itself, And we can go on like this for a whole life. Some people do, just not looking at what is no longer working, what on a heart soul level we know just isn't us anymore. It doesn't fit. The clothes are so tight we can hardly move or breathe, right? And and depending on the level of conditioning, the deep levels of attachment that we might have to what's been, feeling like if we listen inside to what our truth is, we're going to upset the apple cart. We're going to hurt other people. We're going to have to face an unknown, right? Like, I don't know what to do next. If I upset this apple cart to pay attention to what's in here, and honestly, we might not even trust what's in here or think it's okay to listen to our own truth and guidance, which is just another layer of old conditioning. So the more that we're in resistance and we keep trying to go along with what's been or what other people want from us, we can start co-creating with the universe, manifesting, right, with the universe, since we're always co-creating, and I don't believe we're ever doing it solely from our own self-will and ego. I think that it can definitely be more involved in this scenario, because we don't know yet that there's a different construct, there's a different template that we can actually give life to, a different blueprint we can express. But as we're over here, the more things get uncomfortable and chaotic inwardly, the more that's going to reflect outwardly. So perhaps you're going to attract to you more accidents in the physical world or in your own body. Perhaps it will be the root of a manifestation of some, illness or condition in the body. There's a good chance that when we operate in this, we can't really be in true relationships with others because we ourselves are sort of living our own lie. So how do we then live a true relationship with somebody else, if that makes sense? And perhaps we are frustrated internally, so we act out more externally. And we think life is hard and bad and out to get us, and maybe it's just because we don't want to make a change. We don't want to go into the unknown. We don't want to feel like we don't know. We don't want to create a mess, even though we're kind of living in a mess, but maybe it's familiar and maybe it's just what we know, so it just feels normal. I always think about, there are two characters, and I was getting them kind of confused for a while. Linus and Pigpen from Charlie Brown. And how, Pigpen is kind of always walking around in this swirl of, dust and scattered energy and a fluffy field of chaos, right? I think they illustrate it more as probably just, oh, he's just dirty, right, Pigpen. But we can be psychically dirty, right? We can be energetically dirty. And we can just say that this is just messiness because we haven't really tended to and cleaned up our own self. We haven't come home to what our truth is. We haven't acknowledged what our truth is. We have been afraid of what our truth is. We have been afraid of, oh my gosh, if I admit this truth, what do I do next? I don't know. But if we don't come to the edge of I don't know, we don't really know how to move forward. It's by coming to the edge of the I don't know, by opening to the I don't know, that we can gain more insight and information and guidance and direction. So, so there's this messiness. And this messiness really requires us to do that deep dive and to not only do that self-healing, but this kind of messiness is probably happening because we don't even know that there's healing yet to do. We're at a developmental stage where we're just sort of swirling in a lot of wounding and stories and belief systems and conditionings that are keeping us stuck. And we're afraid of creating any more mess than what maybe we already feel like we're living in. Like, oh my God, I don't want things to get worse. I don't want to feel worse. But from that perception and that level of seeing, it's hard to see that it will just keep getting worse. So last year, 2 years, 3 years ago, I don't remember, 2022, when I moved out of the apartment that I loved, I was kind of forced. I kept being forced and pushed by life to move. But I was very resistant. I wanted to be there. I loved it. And I kept digging my heels in more and more. And then within just a couple weeks period, there was a sequence of events that things just started happening in my physical world that were pushing me to the brink of having to surrender to the guidance that was trying to come through and show me. But because I kept digging my heels in, it just kept getting, worse and worse. So fortunately, it didn't take long, and I was able to go, okay, I surrender, hands off the wheel, hands off the reins. I'm going to listen to what you're telling me, and I'm going to make this change, even though me in my human form, does not want to. Okay? So, had I not done that, then it would be easy to see that there would have been like this continuous tumbling down of my world around me that would create more stress inside of me until I'd had enough, or I guess until, if I had been operating at a different level, until I just thought that it was life, out to get me, and I just needed to handle that, right? And just like, this is just how life is, and so I could have just rolled over and believed that I had no power, I had no say, I had no choice. So that's one scenario. So the next scenario is when we know how to listen, when we know how to honor our true guidance and our true essence and what we're actually being invited towards. This can even be a little bit trickier in some ways because we're having to step up and be accountable and take full responsibility. Because now we're at different developmental stages in our growth and evolution, and we know better, right? We know how to listen. We know how to stay in our alignment of what is right and true. We know how to let go of what no longer fits in our true alignment, which allows our life to continue to flourish and find joy and peace and balance and harmony. But sometimes we still come up against those things that it's really hard. And if we like things to be neat and tidy, if we like to have full understanding of how it's going to play out, so in other words, we want some level of control. We don't yet know how to trust in just the unfoldment of the divine timing and divine process. Things can still get messy. And things can get messy when we start making those aligned choices. Because when we start to change and grow, there are different stages and people, places, things, situations in our life that we're going to grow away from. And as we grow away from those, the apple cart will be upset. But unless we know how to trust that even these apples that might get a little bruised, those bruises are necessary for their next level of whatever their unfoldment is. And that we then, in those instances, we're not only acting as a catalyst for our own growth and evolution, but we're also, inadvertently becoming a catalyst for other people's growth and evolution if they so choose to look inside at why they're being affected, what's being affected, what is their triggers, how do they manage their own inner landscape. So, this can be hard and it can be messy. So it was probably the end of the 90s, and I was part of this conscious community, and we did a lot of, there was a course that was a part of this community for people to come outside the community and take, and members of the community to actually participate in. And it was a course on, helping us get to levels of self-realization, helping us to recognize and clear conditioning, blockages, attachments, and begin to come home to our own true voice and true essence. And as a student, I went through for my first course, and then students who graduated could come back every month to support and be assistance for the next group of students that came through. So I was in the process of going through my first experience as a student, and it rocked my world. Like, it shook so many things loose, which then meant that I needed to be following new awarenesses, new perceptions that I was awakening to. And I was in a relationship at the time. And I came back full and ready to, embody everything that I had seen and learned about myself in this healing trajectory that I was set on. And he was like, he was frightened, he was scared, he felt insecure, he felt overwhelmed, all of these things. Finally, he kind of, went through as a student himself, and within a couple months, we had both been growing and changing, and part of that, for me, knew that I was no longer aligned in this relationship. So, the main teachers of the course, part of the community, we went and we talked with them. We talked with members of the community. We did process work around it, all of this. And I remember the main teacher at that time said to me, I'm going to suggest that you let things be messy. Oh, like I just did not like that because I wanted control over it. I wanted to go through the breakup with both of us feeling good. I didn't want to feel responsible. I wanted there to be clear communication, and I wanted him to understand every reason why so that he would be on the same page with me, because I didn't want any more grief than what I was feeling, and I didn't want him to feel any grief. So I really wanted to make it, harmonious. And, you know, our mentor just said, some things have to be messy. And I'm going to suggest that this is a moment that you let go of needing this to fit into any box that you want it to, and let it be messy. Let the pieces fall where they may. Listen to your truth and make those choices according to what you know you need for your own growth and evolution. So I did that. And it was the right move. It was the right way. I could have done it better. I could have done it a little bit more gracefully in the fallout of it. However, I was trying on new shoes, right? I was still finding my way. So I left a bit of a trail of mess around me, of which I went back a couple years later and, just said like, hey, I'm sorry for the way some of that went down. I recognize I may not have been being as sensitive as I would have liked to be. So I tried to clean up my mess. Time had passed. He understood. It was the right move for him as well. So the messiness resolved, right? The apple cart, those bruises, those apples got made into a pie. And it might not have been the sweetest pie, but it was a pie. And I had to let him do that. I had to let him go through his process. I had to let him not understand where I was and what I was needing and why this wasn't going to fit. So, that was a really interesting lesson for me, though, because I really wanted answers. I wanted to do it right. I wanted to get it right. I did not want to evoke pain or suffering. And yet I knew that what was happening in me from that first scenario, I couldn't stay where I couldn't breathe anymore. And I let things get messy, and everything got put back together the way that it was supposed to, right? The dust got moved out of that house, and the new house got redesigned inside of me. So, this isn't unusual when we're on a trajectory of growth. When we're on, and I'm going to even say, when we're on a trajectory of transformation. Transformation tends to be, have a lot more moving pieces than just growth. Growth, you can kind of remain in your same reality, or, in your same kind of reality, your same level of consciousness, your same operating from the same values, perceptions. Transformation, on the other hand, is when everything gets turned upside down and you can no longer be in that reality, and it takes a while for the new reality to ground and anchor. And in that process, things can feel really messy and confused inside. Things can feel very messy and confused outside. And the more that we can really listen and follow the inner guidance of our soul. How do we know we're listening to that heart soul? The best way is because we've practiced coming in and anchoring in our body and bringing all of our energy back so that we're coherent inside of us. I have a lot of videos that are sprinkled with this message. Because this is our empowerment, this is our clarity, this is our higher knowing. And when we can listen and over time keep trusting, we don't have to know what the full outcome is. We don't have to know the answers, right? We don't have to know the answers. And we can sort of wander around a little bit and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling, sensing. This is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking. I don't really know what this means, but I'm open. We can say that to the universe. We can say that to somebody else. We can say that to somebody that we feel like it's kind of breaking apart and we don't know how to do it, or something that we're trying to heal. Like when I went back to that partner, I still didn't have all the answers necessarily, but what I knew is that, it could have been, if I had known what I knew, a year or two later, I wished I would have known that. I would have done it a little bit differently, but I didn't, right? But now I know different. I know better. So I want to come back and I want to do better. And I want to just say, yeah, that was messy. I want to take accountability for that. I want to take responsibility for that. Because when we're in messy situations, this has just been my experience, not just this one, but other messy kind of situations. The more that I know that I maybe have created a bit of a mess, but maybe I don't want to, I don't really know how to talk about it. I don't know what to do with it. I just go away, right? Like the first one. I just want to push it away, go away. We'll just let time heal that. Sometimes time does, sometimes it doesn't. But if it keeps stewing in here, then that's a message that the mess is still there. I've got a pile that is like under the bed. Or maybe now it's in the corner because I can see it. And when we can just go and accept the sacredness of our journey, accept the sacredness, like, yeah, maybe I made a little mess. Maybe I could have said this, or I could have responded a little bit different. We just go back and we sweep it up, It doesn't have to be like a big thing, but we need to get it out of us because it's screwing with our alignment, right? It's screwing with who we know ourselves to be, with the integrity that we know that we are. And then we can, make those amends the best that we can. And sometimes, my gosh, even that can get messy. But when we know we've said what we've said, we've owned what we've owned, we've been accountable within us, and then we've maybe had to feel the tail between our legs and do the best that we can outside of us, we're back in alignment. We're back in harmony and balance. How the other person receives that isn't necessarily always our business. Our job is to listen to our truth and, with the intention of hopefully creating a bridge that alchemizes and harmonizes any hurt or misunderstandings that have been involved. And then we let it go. Then we just have to let it go. Same thing if somebody comes to us, if somebody wants to come to us, right? And then how gracious can we be? How open can we be? How well can we listen? Have we healed whatever we've assumed or, believed has been done wrong to us, so to speak? That's ours to heal. But then it's really lovely when somebody else can, yeah, just kind of open themselves up, not to fix it, not necessarily to change it if there's nothing to fix or resolve, but just to bring harmony and balance, and that kind of takes any messiness and it actually does create that alchemy that feels good for both people, right? That feels like freedom then for both people. And what a beautiful thing that is. So from messiness, right, into freedom. So these are the polar opposites, so to speak, but it's a continual journey, right? None of us are going to get it all right, especially not at this point in time, right? It's messy all over the place. Look around. Look around. We don't have to see very far. I feel like I was really messy over in this last, week or so of this new moon and eclipse. I have felt very messy. And okay, so I listen, I acknowledge. I don't have to feel shame or guilt or beat myself up, because that just creates more static and chaos and judgment, and it's kind of old conditioning. We aren't doing that anymore. We aren't doing that anymore. And now I move forward, right? So, any messes, let me know in the comment so that you're not alone. None of us are alone. And maybe it'll help bring more clarity to the mess, or maybe it just helps to share. All right, everyone. Have a good one. Be well.